Reflections. Soul Trader, Part 4. Excerpts from Soul Trader, Identity in a Digital Age by Mary Harrington. If it is not our physical desires or our yearning for recognition, what is at the core of our supposedly authentic selves? Who or what even asks the question? Plato would have said this is surely logos, our rational capacity for comprehension. We might note that deep reading as an habitual practice has declined significantly since the digital revolution has fostered. We might speculate, with theorists of literacy such as Walter Ong and Adam Garfinkel, that this phase shift in our use of information technologies has likely also altered our experience of interiority. Perhaps without this change, we might not believe it possible for a machine to think. In any case, this is the metaphysical, cultural, and political question that now confronts us: whether or not we are willing to accept, collectively, that logos is something a machine might one day achieve. Is there any difference between the kind of pattern recognition and computation performed by AI and the thinking performed by a human intelligence? Are computation and comprehension the same thing? It should be clear by now that I do not think this to be true, but it remains difficult to explain the nature of the error from inside the modernist account of reality that has reached its pinnacle in the effort to mechanize logos itself. We can, though, draw some inferences from the results of extending the modernist paradigm to eros and thumos on the likely outcome of applying the same principles to logos. For in none of these cases so far has the effort at instrumental control of our souls provided solutions, or even much engineering leverage, to the problem of human nature. As this author has argued, our efforts to re-engineer eros have not delivered a utopia of pleasure, but rather its deadening and flattening across the board, one in which the underlying asymmetries of embodiment and desire nonetheless persist, just less constrained by social guardrails and subject mainly to the impersonal laws of supply and demand. Similarly, the expansion of commerce into thumos has not accorded perfect self-realization and recognition for all. Rather, it has delivered a dead and empty proliferation of hollow identities: flags, parades, merchandise, personal branding, and behind it the same alienation as ever. Meanwhile, the power of thumos to orient individuals or societies toward honorable achievement or meaningful action has been captured and transformed into clicktivism, influencer status, and vociferous political networks more oriented toward infighting than institution building. In this bleak and hypermediated hall of mirrors, even groups with genuine political grievances can end up politically crippled, unable to organize purposefully at scale toward long-term ends. What, then, will be the result of attempting to extend the mechanistic modern paradigm to logos, our capacity for comprehension? If the pattern holds, the result will not be thought, let alone godlike artificial general intelligence. Rather, it will, in however sophisticated a form, remain dead calculation, without understanding. Such calculation may have innumerable useful applications, but it cannot, by definition, ever cross the line to creative intelligence. Dead sexuality parasitizes on reproductivity. Phenomena such as pornography and hookup culture map onto falling rates of family formation. Dead identity politics parasitizes on our capacity to form ourselves in relationship with and service to those around us, crippling our capacity to function as polities and social groups. And following a similar logic, we can predict that dead thinking, that is to say, the kind of probabilistic calculation based on datasets, weightings, and prompts, will parasitize on our capacity to comprehend our own world, and beyond this, to understand what distinguishes mechanical pattern recognition and the human capacity for comprehension. The cost will be felt in countless small acts of impersonal cruelty performed by computer decision-making in the absence of understanding.
We start with the breaking news that the EU's anti-crime agency Europol says at least 25 people have been arrested in connection with AI-generated child sex abuse material. The suspects were engaged in the distribution of the images of minors fully generated by artificial intelligence. It has been one of the first cases involving AI-generated child sexual abuse material. Well, let's get more from our correspondent Anna Holligan, who covers The Hague, where Europol is headquartered. She's in Scotland at the moment. And Anna, what more do we know about this operation?
So this is one of the first ever operations targeting AI-generated images of child sexual abuse. We've just had the details from Europol in the last half an hour. So the main suspect here, a Danish national, he was arrested last November. He was running an online platform, Europol says, where he distributed these AI-generated images that he had produced. Following an online payment, users from around the world were able to get a password and then access this material, which showed children being abused. Now, you might instantly think, well, these are AI-generated images, so perhaps less harmful than real-life images. In actual fact, there are a number of challenges here. So first of all, the proliferation of these images and the ease at which they're able to be generated makes it harder for investigators to track down the perpetrators, but also the real-world victims of child sexual abuse. And because the technology is so easy to use, more and more of these images are being created, AI-generated images.
The AI chatbot on social media X shocked users recently when its response in Hindi came loaded with abuses and slangs after alleged provocation by users. The banter started when an X-user requested that Grok provide a list of 10 best mutuals. After a silence, the user responded with some harsh comments. This prompted Grok to retaliate with an equally casual tone and slur-loaded response. The unfiltered responses left netizens shocked and sparked a debate on social media about the future of AI.
In pseudo-relationships that end in inhuman disaster, like the calamity that befell Sul Setzer III. And more pervasively, in a slow attrition to our capacity to comprehend, and with it to ascribe comprehension to humans, having accepted the personhood of machines in its absence.
I've developed an addiction to AI. My AI is actually on my best friends list.
If you're anything like me, you use ChatGPT for everything. ChatGPT is my counselor, my therapist, my best friend. It knows all my secrets.
Story time on how I almost got kicked out of the University of Michigan my freshman year for using ChatGPT.
Okay, so ChatGPT is down, but we do not panic.
You're literally one AI agent away from making $10K a month.
The most gut-wrenching feeling in the world is when the ChatGPT chat that you've been using for about 6 months starts referencing things that don't exist. It must be what it feels like to notice for the first time that a loved one has dementia or something.
GPT is down, and I don't know about anyone else, but I have come to the conclusion that I can't use my own brain anymore. Because, for example, right now I want to bake a cake, and normally I ask ChatGPT, how do you make a carrot cake? I can't simply Google something anymore. Like, I need a step-by-step breakdown from my best friend, who is also a robot. And now, it's like he's passed away. So
last night I went out with friends, and one of my friends brought a friend. We were talking about space, and I said, fun fact, the size of Neptune's storms are so large they could eat Earth. And then little Tagalong speaks up and he goes, oh, that's not true, bro, that's not true. And I'm like, okay, so I take out my phone, I go to NASA's official website, and I show him with proof that it is true, and he goes, no. He takes out his phone, opens ChatGPT, and says, yo, Chat, is this real? You're using an AI model to fact check NASA!
I think we've reached a point with AI where we can confidently say this is not a tool that is revolutionizing learning. This is a nightmare that is destroying learning. Not once have I seen a single student use AI as a resource or in a way that is even remotely ethical. 100% of times when I see students use it, it is so they do not have to think. I'm talking about putting an essay prompt into ChatGPT, not even reading the essay prompt.
Indeed, at the fringes of transhumanist thinking stand those who argue simply that transhumanists are not human, or that in the future, digital selves should be accorded the same rights as humans. If this prophecy seems bleak, there is hope. In his famous essay on technology, Martin Heidegger quoted the poet Hölderlin to the effect that the only way out is through. Where the danger lies, there also grows the saving power. As we have seen, throughout our civilizational history, our ideas concerning the nature and topography of the soul itself have developed in tandem with our understanding of the nature of reality more broadly, while both have been profoundly shaped by the information technologies at our disposal. Today, the same dynamic applies. And the crucial epistemological direction, the one that both deprives us of a place to stand, but also returns that ground to us, has already been set, from within the quantum discoveries of science itself. And this formation in turn hints at the most tantalizing prospect of all, that we may yet find a way forward, without needing to discard the remarkable achievements of modernity to do so. Most of what has ensued since 1900 has been a continuation of modernity by other means, reorienting inward to the self, the instrumental modernist mindset. The result has been a steady dismantling of the self into the malleable stuff of identity, now open to commodification. But what we have, throughout the history of the West, referred to variously as the soul, then laterally the self, remains elusive. As Lacan noticed, it never becomes wholly identified with its identities. But this conundrum is not, as Lacan imagined, just an endlessly frustrating source of psychic hunger. It is the way out. Chasing that elusive extra something has become the catodic quest of AI research. A great many remarkable, powerful, and culture-changing discoveries have already been made as a byproduct of such efforts, and we should expect many more. But much as the long-term post-pill feminist consequence of attempting to abolish sex difference was a new wave of feminist sex realism, in attempting to mechanize logos, we will learn the hard way why artificial intelligence is not logos. We can capture this succinctly in the distinction between computation and thinking, or, if you prefer, between AI and living souls. And we may not rewind even as far back as Occam or St. Augustine, let alone Plato, for conceptual tools with which to frame this. We need only step back a little over a century to Max Planck and the great weirding of reality that never quite reached the mainstream. The central insight of this missed revolution of our metaphysics is that the universe of classical physics, while an adequate account of reality for everyday purposes, is itself a byproduct of forms of reality and of consciousness that are not reducible to mechanism. For quantum physics, consciousness is both irreducible and also coextensive with the world outside our heads. If this is so, then as the philosopher and technologist Bernardo Kastrup puts it, the substrate of mind itself is not stuff. It is the subject, not an object. If this interpenetration of reality and idea is accepted in principle, so too accepting its entanglement with our own consciousness becomes a logical inevitability. And from this it follows that we can only answer the question posed by AI by exiting the modernist cul-de-sac, aided by the discoveries of Planck and others. And in doing so, we retrieve a 21st century version of the ontic logos, that pre-modern intuition of the infinitely complex interpenetration of that something within us that perceives, and that which we perceive. The heart of this understanding of reality is our willingness to insist on a conceptual distinction between that something, the soul, and those soul simulacra we are able to engineer. Or if, as Castra puts it, mind is not stuff, but the substrate of what we perceive as stuff, then it follows that all of reality, the entire universe, is in mind. But it also follows that while this encompasses our mechanical inventions, the converse is not true. Once we grasp that, it is easy to understand that computation and comprehension are not the same thing. And then it becomes easier to see why, for example, there is a qualitative difference between giving your child an AI-powered language learning tool and giving your child an AI-powered digital friend. It also becomes clear why identity is not the self or the soul, but merely the dead byproducts of our failed attempts to commodify the soul. There is a great deal more work to be done in distinguishing the proper use of digital calculation from mistaken efforts to conflate such calculation with comprehension. That work is beyond my scope here. My point is simple and optimistic. Once we accept that the human soul is irreducible to mechanical calculation, we need neither reject the digital era and its singularities out of hand, nor fear being subsumed by them. Instead, we can once again orient ourselves toward genuine progress, in the sense of committing our collective endeavors to pursuing human flourishing across all three aspects of our nature: eros, thumos, and logos, understood as integrated parts of a whole through our Creator. From a vantage point that retrieves the soul as a necessary predicate for reality as such, the notion that humans might be conflated with our own mechanical inventions is as self-evidently absurd as the 18th century fantasy of engineering clockwork humans. It is likely, too, that from this vantage point we will rediscover the value of pre-modern theorists of the ontic logos and the human soul to a postmodern physics and technology capable of encompassing these complexities. Enough, perhaps, to free us from the quagmire of dead identity and rise once again as the souls we actually are. For whoever desires to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel's will save it. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? Or what will a man give in exchange for his soul? Mark 8, verses 35 to 37.